And we're live, everybody. How are you? Happy early Thanksgiving. Happy November. It's been a one crazy year for research. Chris Sauber is here with me. He's joining.
Hello.
We got the beautiful slides done by Carlos. This month's topic is about, and this is the November 2019 webinar for those watching from the future. As always, replay will be sent to everybody that registered. Replay will go on YouTube as well. And ask your questions in the chat, and we will take questions as they come. So, this topic, very near and dear to my heart. It's probably the topic Chris and I know the best.
We do?
Of everything we've done. Okay, owning a clinical research site from a philosophical and practical perspective. Okay, so I mean, it's a lot to process, but we can do it, and we're gonna get into some philosophy, and then we're gonna get into some practical aspects of owning a site. So philosophy is why, I think, therefore I am. Well, I think I have a site, therefore I might, right? Versus practical. Okay, what do I do now?
Okay.
Right? We just negotiated a lease with the landlord. I mean, these are things you're going to all have to do. We try to reduce risk. For those that want to have a good laugh, follow me on my TikTok. I'm going to have a funny thing on there. Also, I'll put on Instagram of the 30-second summary of how the meeting with the landlord went for a new site. So these are things that you have to do constantly when you own a site or when you're starting a new site. And Chris and I are forever in startup mode because we're always starting a new clinic or a new business, right? So we're good at this topic because we do it all the time.
Too much.
Too much? No, you said not too much. You say you like this part.
I do like this part, but it takes away from all the other things you need to be doing.
Yes. We're only two people. We are humans. We are superheroes, but we are also humans.
Superheroes.
Yes.
Okay, sure.
Okay, so questions as always, leave in the chat. Let's go, guys. Let's get some good ones. Most engaged chat person is gonna get a book. All right. I did a contest on Instagram. We actually have to go to UPS store and send them out. There's only 3. I thought 10 people were gonna win. Only 3 won because only 3 followed the directions to the T. Okay, but for you guys listening, the most engaged chat member, we will send a book to you. Okay, today. So we're gonna be watching. We're gonna be watching.
I know what you mean, but what book?
Oh, thank you, Chris. This is why you're here, man. The Comprehensive Guide to Clinical Research, the best book in the history of the world, the history of literature.
So that's not blasphemous at all. The Bible's is worse.
I was gonna say in research.
Oh, okay.
The best book on research in the history of literature.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, no blasphemy here. I actually stand by that. Somebody said love the audiobook podcast hybrid. We got a front runner for free book. Okay. We got a front runner. He's winning. Thank you very much. Okay. So let's get into this because we could play around all day, but we got to get into business because this is serious stuff. And look, guys, right now is the holiday season, so when everyone else is like relaxing or taking it easy, you take some breaks too. This is the holidays. You want to enjoy with your family, but don't just completely coast. The year is not over.
No coasting?
The year, you still have 5 weeks left. You can accomplish a lot in 5 weeks, okay? So especially when it comes to mapping out what you want to do as far as owning a site. And, this could have been like a topic for the new year. Everyone has a New Year's resolution. Somebody said they need the book. Good. I want to see comments. I want to see what you're thinking about, what I'm talking about, what Chris is talking about. We need to see engagement, okay? So, anyways, let's get into the slides before I go off on a tangent. Starting a new site. To start one or more new clinical research sites, you will need these things, okay? You need a PI, which is a principal investigator. You need an actual location. We're not doing virtual trials just yet in the sense that These are siteless trials. Okay, so you still need a location, even though it is 2020 and the industry has been talking about virtual trials forever. You still need a location. Okay, you need minimal equipment, exam table, waiting room chairs, everything rounds up to about $8,000 for just everything you need, bare bones for like a clinic, right? And then you need a study coordinator, although you don't even need that. Like if you want to be the owner, you can be the coordinator. And somebody asked, and I like this question already. If I get into the $3,000 Site Owner Academy before the January price increase, is the course also accessible later? Yes. Thank you. This guy is very much a front runner to win. So for the rest of the year, okay, the Site Owner Academy is $3,000, and that's a lifetime entrance. Okay, it's designed to be finished in 3 months, but the material is designed to be finished in 3 months. But the webinars, we do webinars just like this with any meeting every week. They're mastermind groups. We don't have slides, but all the site owners in the class get together, talk. We even share studies in this thing. Okay, it's 3,000. You're gonna have access to that forever. In January, it's going up to 10,000. We actually have too many people in there. That's why we're raising the price. Okay, but so thank you for that plug. Back to the questions. Cost is without rent. Yes, this $8,000 is the cost of the furniture and equipment you need. Okay, so and then I was saying you can be a site coordinator yourself. You don't need to hire one if you're trying to bootstrap it. Okay, if you can't, then you should. Like a lot of CRAs don't have time to also be the coordinator. So they hire a coordinator and then they do what they do best since they're CRAs and monitor their own site once a week or so whenever they have time. So, what do you think, Chris? Anything to add?
Sure, you should be a coordinator, at least initially, even if you have no idea what you're doing.
And tell them why, because everyone hears that and they say, yeah.
There's no work that needs to be done coordinator-wise. You really don't need to know what you're doing, other than being able to speak, right? So essentially, the only time you really need to understand what you're doing at any degree is for a site selection visit. And it's really not understanding what's to be done. It's really more understanding what needs to be said. Because you're going to get asked some questions about being a coordinator. You don't have to demonstrate knowledge, but you do have to be able to speak accordingly. And it's not that difficult. So save the money. Don't hire a coordinator, and wait until you're assigned to study.
Mm-hmm.
You're awarded a study.
Another comments, and we will reply to comments in real time. Okay. Any discount on the class, so I'm assuming the Site Owner Academy, in your $1,000 a month consultancy package. We won't give you a discount on the consulting, and that's a month to month. We will give you a discount on the Site Owner Academy if you do both. Okay. But you have to do both. And it has to be before the end of the year. Okay, next slide. So thank you for that, Chris. Excellent insight. Next slide. It's taking a while to get these slides going. Oh, I think the network's fine. By the way, Carlos did a fantastic job on these slides.
Always does, doesn't he?
Well, he's really outdone himself this time.
Yeah.
Yeah, look at this nice, how to open an SMO. No, scratch that. Site network.
Yeah. And it's got little images too.
Yeah, so SMO, Site Management Organization. Nothing wrong with the business model. What is wrong about it is the word SMO has developed such a negative brand associated with it. You don't want to be a part of that. Although I do hear from sponsors that SMO is making a comeback.
Right, I hear the same thing.
Okay, but now the smart ones are called site networks first. Like they emphasize we're a site network.
Mm-hmm.
Even though it's an SMO, it's no different than 1999, guys. Okay, it's the same thing. Right? So many people find out how profitable one site can be, and then of course they want to do it a bunch of times. They want to scale it. The reality is most sponsors don't want to work with SMOs because of lack of quality that has happened in the past with SMOs. SMOs, typically the way the business model used to work is they go into a doctor's office, they give the doctor like 70%, they take 30, but then they don't do a good job training the staff. They don't do a good job kind of onboarding the staff. So there's just a lot of errors, a lot of nasty data, a lot of like ugly stuff for the monitors. And then SMOs sort of built this bad reputation, as opposed to site networks, where it's more of a loose alliance amongst sites that know what they're doing already. And then they're able to spend more time onboarding new people because it's not scaled as much as it is a boutique, right? So instead of McDonald's, think, what's a fancy burger place? Instead of McDonald's, think Morton's Steakhouse, okay, where you can get a burger too. Like that's what a site network is. Do SMOs typically provide coordinators? Yes. So they did in the past, but there were some that did not. So they did in the past to where they will bring on a coordinator and train the site and then leave them alone. And that was where the SMOs got in trouble. There were SMOs that operated the proper way and left the coordinator in place. Okay. So, but a lot of these SMOs in the late 90s tried to scale too quickly, and they ignored quality of data. Right. So the solution: do this. Build a site network instead of an SMO. Okay. And Chris and I, we went at conferences. We talked to CRO after CRO after CRO after sponsor after sponsor after CRO after CRO.
That's what I'm talking.
In that order, we did exactly that order.
Exactly.
Yes. And what did they all tell us? We love site networks. We want to work with your site network. You have how many clients in your database, Dan and Chris, with DSCS that pay you $1,000 a month, and we offer them trainings and all kinds of other stuff too? How many? Oh, wow, that's a lot. Yes, we love site networks. Okay, so
all true.
They want rapid startup. They want patience, and they know that we still have quality in our sites.
That was the key, right? The patience, because
the patience is the key. So explain to the people, Chris.
They wanted us to be able to rate our clients in order of who provided the most patience, right? Who could they count on to provide patience for the studies? So a little more difficult than just here's our clients, right?
That's right.
So it always boils down to the same thing. I mean, it's a business. They want to be able to execute their studies in a timely fashion in the timeline that they think it should take. Thus, they want to make sure they're taking on quality sites. And then, by their definition, quality is not the data. Quality is getting the patients.
There you go. Okay, so focus on building a site network. But before we get into like La La Land, okay, start with one site at a time. Okay, so here's how to do it. And what really should have been on this slide, I mean, this is all good, but what really should have been on this slide to start this off was start with one site. Okay.
Oh, without a doubt.
That's always the answer. You want to build a SMO or a site network? I don't really care what it's called. It's the same business model. Well, start with one site. You're not going to start, especially if you don't know what you're doing or you don't have experience with this stuff.
You want to fail one time or numerous times.
Yeah, you don't want to scale your mistakes. I mean, that's really not a smart thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we have a comment. We're going to answer these comments in real time. Wow, it's a great one. So I have been front runner for the book right here. Okay, somebody needs to catch up. I have been a coordinator at a site for a while now. I am a CTA, regulatory startup, innovative study design, at a big CRO. I won't mention who it is. We don't want to get in trouble.
Does it mention there though?
Yeah, but I don't want to get them in trouble.
Sure.
I will be a CRA in the next couple of months. What other skills should I pick up while I have this network of minds at the CRO to learn from before starting my own site and site network? Contracts, investigator payment, site ID and feasibility, any others? I think the most important one is the site ID and feasibility that you need to focus on. If you have a way to pick someone's brain there.
Yeah, I would completely agree. And please pass on the information to us as well.
We will help you. I think you need to be a client. Okay, but getting the studies is the most important thing. You're going to learn the contracts. We're going to help you with that if you become a client. Payments, all those things are sort of take care of themselves if you know what you're doing. Getting the study is everything. Okay, it's the difference between failing and succeeding.
There's a few things I would be interested in. I don't know if it would be helpful to this person that's asking the question, but what do they use to determine if a site is competing with another site, right? And it's probably different from CRO or sponsor.
Good one. Expand on that in case they don't know.
So oftentimes, I mean, and this is just a guess on my part, but I believe that oftentimes the sponsor or CRO picks some sort of geographical radius, right? So if there's a site here, we're not taking on another site within 30 miles of that radius.
Right.
Right? Or it could be in the same zip code, or it could be in the same city name. I don't even know what they use, but it would make the most sense if it's like some sort of geographic radius. I don't know. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's what I
would like to know.
Very good. And Carlos did put this on this slide. It is recommended you first open one site and then work on expanding the number of sites after. So yeah, what Carlos is trying to say, I completely agree with this because we said it, is anybody can open a website, okay, and put a logo on there and say you're an SMO or you're a site network, okay? That's not difficult to do. What's difficult is starting that one site and actually getting it up and running, okay? And then scaling that. So start with one site, then work on expanding the number of sites after gaining experience, getting a lay of the land, okay? The first step is to find a physician. You cannot get any studies unless you have a PI. Bottom line.
No.
An FAQ, I'm going to comment in lieu of the comments here. What if my PI doesn't have experience, Chris? We get this FAQ all the time.
Sure. It's a little more difficult, but not impossible.
Should I target physicians that have experience?
If it's available, sure, but oftentimes what you're talking about is a physician that's currently doing research. They're not going to be interested in doing research with you, and they're already doing it themselves.
Yes, unless they're disgruntled in their current situation.
Or it's something they've done 5 years ago and they haven't done since. Something like that, you certainly may have a chance there.
You could get lucky, but for the most part, what Chris and I are trying to say is you're going to be most successful with a research-naive physician as far as bringing them into your site, right? Especially if it's the first. Especially if you're not research naive, okay? If you're a CRA or a former CRC or somebody with experience, you can sell this physician on why they should join you, right? So that's where it starts. And then, like we mentioned to the commenter before, know where you will find your first study, okay? If you want to open a site in February, and right now is November, I'd be on clinicaltrials.gov right now, even if I don't have a PI. Looking at what studies are available, emailing them. Of course, it works better if you email them with your PI CV, but you can email them just as a site director. Hey, my site is interested in this study. Are you guys still seeking sites? You're going to have to do 100 of those to get 1 or 2, maybe 3 responses, right? Get to know like the process of doing this, okay? Getting approved, and then even better, if you do this, then while you're concurrently talking to physicians, you actually may have potential studies for them, right? Because potential PIs will always ask you, well, what studies do you have for me? Well, you want to do both. You want to be able to go on clinicaltrials.gov and talk to the PIs at the same time. You're going to have to wear many hats. If you're not comfortable wearing many hats and multitasking and doing different things every day, you're not going to succeed as a site owner. If you're not comfortable being rejected, you're not going to succeed as a site owner. It's not like being a CRA at all. You don't never get rejected as a CRA, I don't think. Like in your day-to-day job. What is there to be rejected? Your coordinator tells you they're not going to answer your queries? Okay, that's your biggest rejection you're going to get. Because they don't have time to do your queries.
Right. Yeah, I will tell you the same thing. I don't have time for that.
Right. That doesn't affect your livelihood. Okay.
No, makes your job difficult. But
as a site owner, if a sponsor tells you we're not going to use your site, that affects your livelihood. So you always need to be doing these things. You always need to be on the offensive. Questions in real time. My experience talking with MD, PI, in private practice has been lack of office space and time commitment. Yes, very good. So the time commitment thing is a myth, okay? Most PIs don't need to dedicate that much time to research. if they have the right infrastructure in place. And that's your selling point, right? Of course, the best PIs dedicate a lot of their time to research, but the vast majority that enroll a good amount of patients, the PI is not that involved in the research. Yes, they maintain oversight, safety oversight. They meet with the monitors, but that's about it. They let the staff take over. Now, the lack of office space is kind of what we opened this webinar with. We just are in the process of negotiating an office space with a landlord, right? It's one of the things you're going to have to do. It's recommended that you don't start out with your first site doing this unless you absolutely have to. You should always try to piggyback in your physician's private practice if this is your first go round, all right? Chris and I were taking more risk because it's not our first go round. So we can have a better lay of the land than someone who's new. That's why we say try to not get a lease initially unless you absolutely have to.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
And I may be jumping ahead here. Hopefully,
maybe.
Hopefully, Carlos covers in the slides something about sales.
Yeah, we're only 5/12 through.
Okay, well, we'll wait till the end. I'll bring up sales if it's not covered.
Getting approved for a new study, right? This can take a long time. It can take longer than you think. It's not like you're going to go on clinicaltrials.gov, email a lead from there, and then they're going to give you the study within a month. Okay, it can happen.
It's happened.
It can happen. Even people win the lottery, right? These things can happen. It's just not likely. You don't build a business plan on a foundation of luck. Okay, you want the sure thing. What is sure is that it takes a long time to get a study.
Unfortunately, yes.
3 to 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
And that's even with our services. Without our services can take longer. Okay? I don't know. It's up to you. The variable is you. You watching this and you listening. All right? Your first PI is not likely to be happy with your performance on the first study, and you may have to find a new PI. We've seen it's unfortunate, but it seems to be the case.
Common occurrence.
Common occurrence. It doesn't always happen, but plan on it. And this is why you always have to be on the offense. More studies, more physicians. When you start getting the studies, more patients. This is you need more of everything. Okay, so slide 6. Okay, assess your site profit. All right, from a business perspective, knowing which studies will generate the most income is important. This is when you have the luxury of assessing your site's profits, when you know which studies generate more income. When you're starting out, you're lucky to have 1 study, 2 studies, 3 or 4 studies a year in your busiest year, in the industry's busiest year for your first year. All right, so if you're starting a brand new clinic in this 2020 market environment, you can expect 3 to 4 studies your first year. Any more than that, and you're doing fantastic. Right? So this assessing your site profit becomes important, but it becomes important when you have multiple studies that are perhaps competing with each other a little bit, and you need to know which ones you should focus on more. Okay, so sites tend to focus on studies that generate the most profit. This is a smart thing to do. But you don't know what that is until you're in the middle of doing both of the studies. Right? And then you'll figure it out. If you keep track of your income and expenses every month, you'll know, okay, this study, they pay faster, they pay better, it's a little easier to get the patients randomized than this study. You know where to start focusing on, right? Site networks should keep track of profit per PI and profit per site. That's a metric for the site networks. This is when you have more sites than one, okay? This is why it's important you should start with 1 site so you understand what's your baseline. That's going to be your baseline. If you have 2 sites starting off at the same time, I mean, how are you going to know? You're not going to know until it's too late which one's doing bad. All right. Focus on sites that don't generate as much income and find opportunities for growth. So an average study pays $1,300 a patient each visit and has about 10 to 15 patient visits, and on average should have 10 patients per study. Again, this is just back of the napkin math. If there are no patients that leave the study, which is unlikely and uncommon, your site can earn $200,000 gross revenue per study. Might even be more. It's probably $300,000 gross revenue per study.
Yeah, I was gonna say 250, but it could be 3.
Right. 200 would be maybe the net because these are high profit margins. Okay, high profit margins. Patients, especially new sites, they think that they can rest and that they can take it easy when they got a PI and then they got a couple studies. Well, that's not the case. Okay, that's great. Now you got to get patients in those studies, or else you're not going to make any money. And all that work is for nothing. And then you're going to be surprised at how some of these studies are very difficult to enroll patients you thought would be easy studies are actually difficult. Happens every single time.
Yeah.
The industry, this is why the industry has such a poor track record when it comes to study enrollment. Okay, the industry as a whole. So why are you going to be any different? Okay. So you must have patience in order for your site to be profitable. Let me know if there's questions. Okay. Site enrollment. If you plan on opening a site, you must also have a recruitment plan. It doesn't matter how much a study pays if you can't recruit patients. Exactly. You can negotiate the best budget in the world, have the best PI and staff in the world. If somebody's not, and that somebody has to be you, the site owner. Eventually it could be somebody else, but initially it needs to be you. If you don't have a plan for getting patients, and you're the owner, nobody else is going to have a plan at your site. They're looking to you for what's the plan. Even if the doctor has a huge database, they're going to look at you. What's the plan? How do we do this? Especially if your doctor is research naive.
And that can be most of your plan.
Yep.
The doctor has a huge database.
Right.
But who's going to scour the database for the patients?
Somebody asked, what are some of the best methods you have seen used for recruitment? By far and away, the best method is the PI's private practice, the sub-I's private practice, the patients from that private practice. Second place is community outreach and then online advertising. Okay, Monica's kind of figured out a good way to do to use Facebook Live to get some interest generated from the community, but that like the PI database trumps by far everything else. By far. So this is why we say when we've done webinars on how to get physicians, right? Like every single one of these topics, we've actually done an entire webinar on this. So just go through our archives. It's on the YouTube channel, and you'll see. What is the typical condition and patient demographics at our sites? So I have no idea. I mean, every site's different. It depends on what the physician sees and treats, and what their specialty is, and those are going to be good indicators for what kind of studies you can probably do well on, right? The FDA, here's the interesting thing that I didn't learn until later on in my career. The FDA doesn't state who should be the PI. Okay, like they let the sponsor decide, okay, is this an appropriate principal investigator? But you benefit more from having a PI who actually sees patients and actually treats those type of patients in the real world setting. If you don't have that, maybe one of your sub-I's has that. Lead with your strengths. What form of community outreach have you had the most success with? Support groups, health fairs, okay, sponsored by these big nonprofits. Every community has them. Like Monica just went to NAMI, the National Alliance for Mentally Ill, because we do a lot of psychiatric trials. But every indication has a nonprofit that specializes in providing a service to the community for those patients. So those are good places to go. You want to get in there and volunteer. When you have more money, go to sponsor these things, get a booth at these events. That works, but again, nothing beats PI database.
And if you're dealing with geriatric or mentally ill, they have facilities where they house these people. So
yeah. Dan, what are the recruitment companies you use? I don't know the name of it. But he's the guy that was at our meetup. His name's Andrew, actually. If you message me on LinkedIn, I can introduce you. He does Facebook ads and Instagram ads and things like that. Okay, I just got a message that me and Chris, we got to take a picture for Christmas, for our yearly Christmas card.
Who sent you that?
Somebody.
Do I know this somebody?
Yes. Okay,
Nice.
so we got to do that at our next day. It's that time of the year, guys.
Thankfully, I saved the hats.
Have a holly jolly Christmas, everybody. But we're not done. Okay, we have 4 more slides here. Don't leave just yet. And by the way, it's still up in the air as far as who's winning this book. It's like a 3-way race right now. Okay, so on average, what would be a recruitment budget for a year? That's a good question, Chris. What do you see in these budgets? You negotiate way more budgets than me now. Okay.
They usually don't provide a recruitment budget.
They provide something, right?
They'll provide chart review or something along those lines, and it ranges from maybe 3,000 to 8,000. I've seen.
Yeah, with our guy Andrew, we're actually using one of the sponsors' advertising budget. Monica's good. She got us approved for like 20 grand.
Yeah,
but so far we haven't seen any of it.
But that's after the fact, and you can do that too.
Yeah. So I think that's what the question was mentioning. What is the best way to grow a site network to a small CRO? What CRO services should be added first? Very good question. So the best way to grow from a site network to a small CRO is to have sites that you have influence over. Okay, so that's a very valuable asset that you have for the sponsors when you're a CRO. Okay, so sites that are quickly able to get up and running with central IRBs that will not have problems recruiting patients. And then you have to know the whole process. So if it's a smaller sponsor, because chances are only the smaller sponsors will use you as a CRO, being a new CRO, you're going to have to be able to handhold them through like everything, writing the protocol, finding the IRBs, getting the sites up and running, creating the source, creating the EDC, creating the, sourcing all the vendors. You're going to have to do all of this even before the study starts. And then you're going to have at least a couple monitors to source data verify, source data review, and then somebody to keep the sites motivated to follow up on queries and continue to enroll. Right? So all these things, myself and Chris are doing with like an army of interns right now. Got a question. I joined late. What does PI stand for? PI is Principal Investigator. Okay, next slide. What are your thoughts about site networks with all the virtual... let's see. Well, we're waiting for this next slide to load. Let's see. Okay. What are your thoughts about site networks with all the virtual trial discussion? Does small sites have a chance in the next 5 years? Yes. So what I've discovered, and it was this year that I discovered this, sponsors that or CROs that are using trying virtual trials actually prefer site networks, and they actually prefer smaller sites that can enroll quickly, because at the end of the day, these are not replacing studies that they're doing. This is in addition to studies that they're doing. Okay, when they want some more data on for a particular reason, or they want to try, they have a potential new therapeutic indication they're trying to get into, and a virtual trial is just easier to do for the sponsors and the CROs. So I think there is a small place for these smaller sites, and it's it's nimble. It's how to be nimble in an era where everything in research became big, huge SMOs. Now we're in the era of huge CROs. Okay, well, that's starting to reverse itself back to boutique. And the reason is a lot of these studies have gotten so complex that it's not scalable, right? You need like a boutique.
I don't know if I agree with that.
Well, give us what you think.
I think it all started when the FDA told sponsors they can no longer blame CROs for errors.
But that probably had a lot to do with it also.
I mean, why outsource this if I can't lay the blame on them? I'll
But
just take care of it
those
myself.
things are related, though. You know,
Sure.
boutique, going back to more of a boutique, okay? Because the whole point of these big SMOs and these big CROs were for the sponsor to say, hey, we got this study, now we could be hands off.
Right.
You know? And the FDA said in 2016 GCP revisions, you can't do that anymore. You're responsible for the study,
Right.
sponsor. So now they went back to the drawing board and said, okay, we got to get, we're involved. Now we got to actually pull the veil off of this thing, see who's the Wizard of Oz, right? And what's the CRO doing, right?
Why do we need them?
Yeah, and there's a whole bunch of stories too about that, which we won't get into. Okay, we got a bunch of questions. People want books. Does it damage a site's reputation if they don't hit full enrollment?
A little. I would say a little, and more so if they don't enroll anybody.
So, if you don't enroll anybody, like if you goose egg, right? Yeah. Like 0, that's the worst you can do. Okay. If you said you're gonna enroll 10 and you only enrolled 8, that works.
5.
Yeah, that works a little less. Like it still doesn't reflect as if you enrolled 10. That would be fantastic because that means you're doing what you said you would do, but you're still getting data. And then they start looking into other things like, well, how did you do compared to other sites as far as answering queries, study startup, those kind of things. But 0 is the worst. Okay, 0, you might as well not do the study. First of all, you're wasting money. You're not getting any pay. You're not getting paid. All you're doing is angering all your stakeholders.
You get paid a little, but it's not worth it.
Another question, how do you evaluate locations for sites? Proximity to main freeways, distance from other sites. The way I look at it is distance from competitors. If I know who the competitors are for my therapeutic indications, I want to stay away from them. And then it becomes variable based on where you are in the country. Because if you're in a place like LA, Los Angeles, you can be like 2 miles away, but it's like worlds apart.
And don't be too far from a major airport.
Right. You don't want to be too far from a major airport.
Don't make your CREs drive 5 hours.
Which some sites do.
Sure. If they convince the sponsor that they can recruit these patients, yeah, absolutely.
What tasks could be executed by interns at a new site with 2 new studies? I would say pre-screening. Okay. Regulatory filing in the reg binder. Data entry. Those are the things that come to mind. Anything you can think of?
I didn't hear the question.
What tasks could be executed by interns at a new site with 2 new studies?
Yeah, you could probably work on regulatory a little bit, unless they're like completely new.
Yeah, regulatory filings.
Oh, you said that.
Regulatory filings, the data entry.
Data entry definitely.
Pre-screening. And once they start getting some experience, and then scheduling patients, okay, and then once they get some experience, starting to do some QA, quality assurance, on each other's studies.
Yeah, you said everything I would say.
Yes. Okay, let's do this next slide, and then we'll go to the rest of the questions. Okay, so research-naive physicians can be a great resource for recruiting new patients. This is correct, sir. Okay. They typically have access to crucial patient populations.
That's true.
Right. Remember we said, going back to boutique, sponsors don't really care that much anymore of research naive. They want the data.
That's not entirely true either.
Of course not. I'm saying it for a soundbite.
Okay.
But compared to like 10 years ago, it is true.
Yeah?
Yes. Compared to 10 years ago, they just wanted the PI to look good on paper. Right? That's a key opinion leader. Now, they still want those people, but they also know that they need, especially for the more difficult to enroll studies, they need real-world physicians. Well, and if you can prove to them that you have the infrastructure in place to handhold them, they'll choose that site.
Sure, and the more difficult the study, the more likely the sponsors to take on research naive. But with that being said, many sponsors still want to see PIs with experience, which is very much a catch-22.
Right. Recruiting a research-naive physician to be your PI sets your site up for successful study enrollment. I believe so. Now, if this research-naive physician does not have a private practice and does not treat patients, I would walk away from them. Okay, unless you have no other options.
Mm-hmm.
I'm willing to work with research-naive if they have patients. Okay.
Yep.
I don't want the double negative against me. If I'm going to have a negative, which is research naive, I want a huge positive, which overcomes that, in my opinion, which is big database of patients.
Certainly over time, that overcomes that.
That's right. Questions. Some MDs don't want to be part of research.
Mm-hmm. That's very true.
But willing to refer patients. Don't want to sign up as sub-I. How can they be compensated? I will state this on the record. You need to contact your attorney. Okay? Because there's all kinds of ways. This is what we talk about in our Site Owner Academy as a teaser. These are real world issues.
Okay? I just had a conversation with a physician on Friday about this.
And what did they say?
I told him chart review is about your best case scenario. You probably pay him for chart review. You certainly don't want to ever use that horrible, nasty word referral.
Yeah. In summary, like to give you a Cliff Notes version of what an attorney will tell you, is fair market value. Okay. You don't want to be enticing physicians to refer. You want to pay them fair market value for the task they're doing that only a physician can do.
Sure.
Right? So chart review would be one. Mm-hmm. Because you can argue, well, only they understand their patients and who fits this inclusion-exclusion criteria.
Right.
Is there such a thing as a mobile site where you meet the patient where they are? Yeah, this is one of the things that
there is.
Yes, you don't know because you don't do this.
No, but
at these conferences, there's vendors that do this. This is one of those things that the sponsors are trying to get. Maybe we'll do it. It's kind of like virtual trials.
What do you do? Build out an RV?
Yes, they actually do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh.
So it's a station where they draw blood. They go to the and it's very much related to these virtual trials where they'll do home visits. Okay. Again, this already exists. This is going on now. The thing is, that's like less than 1% of the studies. And maybe the industry will get it to 5 or 10. Maybe in like 10 years. Okay. The thing that I'm seeing is these are not replacing the traditional type of studies. It's just adding more type of studies out there.
How many doctors do you know that would drive around in an RV?
But see, that's the thing. The doctors don't do it. It's the clinic, like the nurses that will do this, the coordinators. And there's like one doctor in that state or in that region that oversees the safety. It's a virtual trial. This is a virtual trial.
Just taking care of the things that can't be done virtually.
Right. This is already going on, but I would not be afraid of this. And it's not a huge game changer, as you will hear about in conferences. Okay? Maybe in 10 years it will. Maybe even in 5. Man, maybe I'm wrong. Who am I?
Sure.
But in my opinion, what I'm seeing is this is like we're doing virtual trials with our site networks, but we're also doing like 99% of them are traditional trials. Right? So I know it's anecdotal, but that's what I'm seeing. How could one know who the competitors are? There is no database of clinical research site, I presume. Yes. So you Google. Okay, you use Google. If you're thinking of starting a psychiatric site in Anaheim, okay, you Google Anaheim Psychiatric Clinical Research. Anaheim Psychiatric Clinical Trials. You will find competitors. Or maybe not. If you don't, then you go on clinicaltrials.gov, you type in the indication, you look at open studies, and you start going through all the privately funded studies, so not NIH, not academic studies, okay, Somebody said plug Society for Clinical Research Sites. They have a database of sites. Yes, but they'll sell it to you. Okay, so you can do this for free. All right, and they only have a database of sites that they know of that are either part of their network, like, and maybe they're looking at the internet all the time, but sites open up all the time. Okay, so the best way is to Google, and then to go on clinicaltrials.gov, search for those indications, and then go through like 100 of those things until you find uh, what you're looking for, right? Like you go on clinicaltrials.gov and you search schizophrenia Anaheim. Okay, you will find the sites, and if you click on 100 of these results, you will start seeing the same sites, right? Either by PI name, site name, or sometimes unidentified site. Um, so, marketing, any support, attending support groups. Yes, support groups. Um, you want to go, you want to contribute to the group. You don't just want to sell. Unless you're a sponsor, then you can sponsor the support group. But if you're going just as an attendee, you want to actually contribute like your knowledge. Okay, and then it kind of comes out because they're eventually going to say, well, what is it that you do? Or it's going to come out naturally. We do research, so I know firsthand how these kind of patients deal with these things. I mean, you can't lie. You have to actually be genuine about it. That's the marketing you do at these support groups. Nothing formal. It's informal. Now, if you sponsor the support groups, then you can do marketing. Okay, you can do the marketing. Anything else, Chris?
Was that the last slide?
No.
Then no.
So just continues what you're saying.
Yeah.
A new PI may be able to get you more patients, but will also require extra attention. This is very true. They may need to be trained on what is expected of them and what they can earn. This is very important.
Especially if they're naive.
If they're research naive and they just signed off on a budget that says like $1 million, or what did we say, 300,000, right? And they see that number, and you don't explain to them, well, that's the total number that we could potentially get, but this is how it works, and break it down. If you don't have that conversation with them regularly and they're new, they just think you're stealing from them.
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen this happen so many times. Even if you do over communicate, they'll think that way. Right? Or they may not be able to find the patients, right? And then so you're not getting paid. What method do you use to pay your PIs? A check.
Gross.
Oh, okay. Well, they said what method? We cut them a check of the gross amount. So when we get a payment from a sponsor, if they are not a business partner, like if they do not have equity in the site, okay, they're just a contractor, independent contractor. Whatever we negotiate on, usually it's around 20% of the gross. They get cut a check, 20% of the gross revenue from that study. And every time I get a check, 20% right off the top to them.
And the reason the gross is so they don't think you're stealing from them, making up expenses that don't exist, or whatever things they might think.
Valid concerns. Valid concerns.
I would agree.
Right, gross. If they are a business partner, meaning they actually own equity in the company with you, you don't pay them anything. You pay them a dividend based on when you get paid.
Yeah, based on the profits.
Do you also include the overhead? Yes, I do. I include the overhead. I even include the startup payment. Everything. Literally everything, unless it's a pass-through invoiceable, like transportation.
Or an MRI.
Or an MRI or something like that. But startup fee, closeout fee, and then everything during the study, including overhead. Okay. Continue to add PIs to your network so you can have access to specific patient population. This is important. You always need to have new PIs. I don't care how successful you are. The most successful site networks out there that are making tens of millions a year, some of them hundreds, serious.
Oh, yeah.
They do this. You think they're okay with just their PIs they have? No, they're always going to recruit new physicians. This is what they do. And the thing with this is the bigger you get, the more your infrastructure can accommodate. So then you can start bringing on truly research naive and plug and play. Okay. Specific patient populations, the more boutique, the better, honestly. Do you also include a herd of PIs taking over research after 6 to 8 months? Is there a contract you have not to hire your coordinators? Okay, so they're saying that if you're like a SMO and you work in a physician's office and you bring in your coordinators, you train them. Is there something in the contract that they can't hire your coordinators?
Well,
yes.
The physician can't.
Yes. Okay. You get an attorney to draft that up for you. Do you guys own the site and bring in PIs to work with, or are you embedding in the PI's clinic? Both. Both. We do both. We do different models depending on the situation, honestly. Okay. Good questions. One more slide. Maybe there's nothing on the slide. Let's see. No, Carlos did a great job. So
he missed an important topic though, but continue.
We're gonna cover it. It doesn't matter if it goes over. Okay. What are the benefits of having? What are the benefits to having many sites? Well, diversification, guys.
Sure.
Protects your income in the events that several PIs leave at the same time. Any site closures will have a smaller impact. Having more sites is ideal, but will take more years to achieve. Okay, so there's a lot of benefits to having a bunch of small sites as opposed to one big site. Yes, having the one big site's easier because everything is there, but there's also some cons. And there's pros and cons to everything. Right? We've just done small sites because that's kind of the way it's played out. But there are pros to having big sites too.
Yeah.
We're in the process of working on one now.
More a medium site than a small site.
Yeah, more a medium-sized site. Okay. How do you monitor all the sites? Do you have any CTMS? We do. So Creo, the unofficial sponsor of our lives.
Our conferences.
Oh, they have actually sponsored our conferences. So Creo, clinicalresearch.io, they do eSource, they do eReg now, and they have a built-in CTMS. Okay, so that's how I look at budgets remotely and see what we're owed. That's how I at least see the eSource aspect of what's been done as far as patient visits, and then you can always get a EDC login for yourself as well. So you can supervise your site even remotely. We have many clients who are CRAs that actually use Creo and EDC to supervise their sites even when they're traveling on site doing something else. Okay. Are there any future threats in terms of regulations, sponsor expectations, trends, etc.? Always threats. Okay. The future itself is a threat. If we know anything, it's that things don't stay the same. They change. So in our Site Owner Academy last week, there was talk about what happens when Congress, I mean, you know this better than me. Explain.
I would say this is a significant possibility of a threat, personally.
Yeah, well, explain.
So everybody knows how the political sides, the two sides, are not getting along. But on this particular topic, they both kind of have the same end game in mind, and that's the Congress right now is putting forth something about drastically reducing drug costs. President Trump campaigned on that initially, so I would assume he's open to this. And if something like that were to come down, where it made it not feasible for sponsors to work in the space of research and development, which it potentially could, that seriously could affect everything. But I know sponsors are concerned about this. I saw it 3 or 4 times over the weekend, and I don't watch a lot of TV, but I saw 3 or 4 commercials and it was a combination of all sponsors I've ever heard of. It was like a list of 100 of them on there about don't allow this to happen if you want new drugs on the market. So, I mean, something like that should happen. Yeah, drastically changes everything. But that's the case and always has been. I mean, there's always things to be concerned about potentially. And who knows what happens with them. So it could happen. Hopefully it doesn't. Now, sales. Sales was not covered.
Right.
And we've done a webinar on this specifically.
Right, but we must not have talked about it in the podcast that we had Carlos make these slides from.
Okay.
Of course, guys and gals, everything is sales when you put on the hat of a business owner. And it doesn't just have to be clinical research, but in our industry, this is what we talk about, okay? Sales. There's 4 stakeholders you got to keep happy. PIs, or physicians, employees, sponsors and CROs, and patients. That's it. Of course, there's more, but those are the 4 key stakeholders that you got to keep happy at all times.
Yeah.
That involves a lot of influence, persuasion,
Sales.
aka sales.
Yeah. You want to study, you got to persuade the pharmaceutical company to give you a study.
Yeah. You want to study with a research naive physician? Well, okay. You're going to have to do a lot of influencing and persuading.
Yeah.
But lead with your strengths, okay? I talked to somebody recently. They're a newer site, and they're freaking out because a sponsor asked them to make a site profile. All right? Do you realize this is your opportunity? They want you to persuade them. They're not telling you that in the email. They're saying make a site profile for yourself so we can learn more about you.
Right.
What they're asking you is translation. Let me translate it for you. We want justification for why we should use you. Go. This guy's freaking out about it.
Well, kind of rightfully so. It's not something he's done before, and he may understand that's the end goal here.
I've seen so many people in this situation lead with their weaknesses. It makes no sense.
Sure.
They say, well, I have a research naive site, and all of our staff are new. Okay? That's not your strengths. You're leading with your weaknesses. Do not do that.
And you're telling them why not to give you the study.
They're going to find out why at some point. Lead with your strengths. They know nobody's perfect. Not even the sites that have super experienced PIs and a lot of patients have no weaknesses. Everybody does.
Yep.
Somebody reply. I think they keep the financials of the pipelines pretty separate. Lowering the drug prices would affect drugs on the market more so than R&D, in my opinion. That's what this person's saying.
Okay. I don't know if that's true or not. We'll see.
We'll see. It is a threat. It's a threat. So we have 3, maybe 4 people that are very engaged. Do you feel like giving all of them, all 3 or 4 of these people, a book? Since we only have 3 to give out from our previous contest?
I don't care.
And we allotted for 10?
I really don't care.
I'm letting Chris be the bad guy if he wants.
Read that last person's quote to me again.
One more. I think they keep the financials of the pipelines pretty separate. Lowering of drug prices would affect drugs on the market more so than R&D, in my opinion.
Okay, so they're saying if a new drug comes out during patent, they would be allowed to charge still what they would charge. If that's true, of course, that's not going to affect R&D. But if it affects all new drugs as well, no, you're putting an end to R&D.
You're reducing incentives to R&D.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Drastically.
Yeah. Okay, so here's the book winners, okay? Mario, email me your address. Ayo, email me your address. Naveen, email me your address. And David, email me your address, okay? That's it. Thank you guys very much. Recording replay will be sent to everybody who registered. And we will catch you all later.
And you told them all to email you their addresses?
Yes.
Okay.
Email me your addresses.
I'm only half listening if you haven't noticed.
Yes. We got 4 winners, so we're good, guys. Good stuff. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody. And we will do a December webinar to pump you guys out. What book is it? The Comprehensive Guide to Clinical Research. Yeah, you won. Don't worry. So just email me your address. If you don't want it, you don't have to. Yeah. Thank you guys. Happy Thanksgiving. Bye-bye.